Okay guys, I've decided to do a dedicated vlog for How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. And I'm filming this intro at the end. I have finished this collection. I really enjoyed it overall, 4 stars. And what you're gonna see in this vlog is me talking after I read 1 or 2 stories, giving a brief synopsis and what I thought about it. I sometimes go into a little more depth for some than others, but overall, really diverse collection of stories by N.K. Jemisin. I really liked just what she chose to play around with in the short story space, and I kind of talk about that with the stories that do the things I like, because in general I like short stories that play around with narrative structure. I like when you talk about things that, sometimes you can't talk about in a big book because it would take too much time away from the plot. In a short story, you can really focus on weird questions, and I feel like she takes advantage of that. Some are definitely more challenging than others, but overall, like I said, 4-star collection, and I hope you enjoy this video. So I've read a few of these stories actually before starting, and I'll update you on my thoughts on those as they come up in the collection. But yesterday I read the first one, and it was called The Ones Who Stay and Fight, I believe. I can find it. But before I get into that, so I read the introduction, which was written by Jemisin, and it talks a lot about why she wrote short stories, what it was like wanting to write speculative fiction in the early 2000s when that was not where publishing was at for Black authors. Like, Jemisin's a powerhouse now. She could not get published in 2002, and she talks about that in the introduction and about how she used short stories to write more Black characters and explore ideas for novels, and it was really just fascinating. But yes, The Ones Who Stay and Fight was the first one, and this one's, I think, interesting because it's not like a short story with a plot, but it has a very strong message, and I think because of where I am, I will be holding on to this story for a really long time. It's the story of this culture, this city that is diverse and happily diverse. Everyone is valued equally. There's no poverty, there's no homelessness. It is, I think, Jemisin's attempt at making a true utopia. And somebody is describing this utopia and trying to convince someone that that's what it is, and this other person does not believe it. I don't know, it was really interesting just reading that, even though I think a little bit it was a little flowery at times. Sometimes the imagery didn't translate, but at the same time, that message of like, this is what we could be, this is what we should aspire to in many ways, much like when I read Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. Like, this utopia, the fact that it could exist, the fact that it really solidifies for me that what I want is for us to value each other regardless of race, socioeconomic status, able-bodiedness, etc. It was, I think its theme is what made me connect with it. There are some stories that have other things that make you connect, but the theme of it was just so, it resonated so strong with me. And the next one I didn't read again because I've read it 1.5 times this year already by accident, and that was A City That Became's prologue, but what's it called? The City Born Great. So this is the short story that basically became The City We Became, which I have a review on. And a lot of people worry that you have to read this short story before the book. This short story is the prologue of that book with a slightly different ending, just so you know. And I read the short story beforehand because my friend Deanie, who I'll link her channel down below, was doing short stories every week, and this was one of the ones that came up. And I really liked this story. The idea of a city having a soul is very interesting to me. It definitely has a different, what I've noticed in general with her short stories so far, she uses a different writing style than I'm used to in her novels. This isn't a bad thing. I still generally love how she forms sentences and everything like that. But it is very different, and I think I noticed that when I read The City We Became. The prologue didn't feel like it fit in with what it became once we were in like chapter 1 and 2. But that story, this is just me telling you, you don't have to read this story before The City We Became, but it's also a really nice story in and of itself, and I might reread it at the end of the collection. The next one I have up is Red Dirt Rich. And also, I've been using this postcard as my bookmark. It came, so I bought this from Sister Sci-Fi, which I'll link the store down below. And they were really nice because I only ordered the paperback, but they sent me the hardback because it took them a while. And I also got this really cool postcard. Like, I think the art is gorgeous. It's by Paul Lewin. And I just think it's really pretty. It's working really well as a bookmark. So yeah, these are my thoughts on the first couple stories. And this might be a really long video, but I can just tell I'll probably want to ramble about these awesome stories. So I've read 2 more stories, and let's see, we'll start with The Red Dirt Witch. Whew. So this is more like historical fiction fantasy with fae, coupled with basically the Black experience in the South. And it was, I thought it was really interesting because you had this mother and daughter who both could kind of like dream premonitions of the future, and you had these fae that were like these other white people, but not like I don't know, like me, white person, like someone who would steal their children because Black children were not as valued as white children. And so it was really interesting because although the daughter and the mom had the same dream, they had different feelings toward it. Like, these dreams were full of the struggle ahead, but also they were dreaming of the first Black president and things like that. And I don't actually know when Jemison wrote this story. If I had to guess, I would have said it was after Barack Obama was elected, but it could have been before because she was writing these in, I think, the 2000s. And it was just really interesting how like they had these different perspectives. And I also really just liked the witchy vibes. It was nice witchy vibes. So that was cool, but I really liked, surprisingly, La Alchemista. This takes place in Italy. At first I thought it was also like a folklore tale like in the past, but it's actually present day, at least the internet's mentioned. But it does feel kind of like those like, here's the moral of the story thing, but it's just this woman who loves to cook and like an alchemist meets her and like keeps giving her weird shit to try and cook. And it was really quiet and calming, and I was just engrossed. It was really cool. I really liked that one, even though it was just about this lady cooking and cooking weird things. And yeah, it was just a nice quiet story. So those are the 2 I've read so far. So I will update you once I've read a few more stories. So I read another story and I forgot the name, so I will write it here. Oh, but I really liked it. It wasn't even like that sci-fi or fantasy. It was more like alternative history sci-fi, which I really liked, kind of discussing this technology advancement that these Haitians needed to combat the French trying to overtake them again. And like the main character goes to New Orleans to try and meet a engineer who is Creole. And I don't know, like I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't really know. That just happens when you read books that have different focuses that you're not used to. So wonderful. But also there's like, it's a short story, but it had like a really cute romance that I was very invested in. And like, I kind of just need Jemison to write like a romance book. Like, she incorporates it in stories like The Shadowed Sun and other ones I like, but now I just kind of want like a Regency romance book or something from Jemison. I doubt I'll ever get one, but like, it was great. I really liked it. So that's the check-in for that story. Yes, I'm wearing a sweater and a cardigan because I'm cold, but I've read 3 stories since I last checked in, and they were all really good for really different reasons, and the setting is different because I'm at my grandmother's house. So there's like an electronic fireplace going on, so if you hear that, I'm sorry. But they were all really cool. So the first one is something called Cloud Dragon. It's like a far-off future Earth. Climate change has dramatically changed the Earth, and there's like people living in space and people living on Earth, and the people living on Earth have like taken this pledge to not like mess with Earth. And we're following the story of this woman who interacts with someone from space, and I guess these people are trying to figure out why the sky is red and the clouds keep acting like these spirally dragons. It was like really interesting, and I liked it. I liked the commentary on like climate change, and like I feel like so often in the sci-fi stories you have like the Snowpiercer effect where like you shoot something into space and it's supposed to fix the climate, but it goes really wrong. And that kind of is thematically in line with what happens here. I really liked that short little thing. And then these next two I knew were connected because of the introduction. But if I hadn't read the introduction, I don't know if I would have known they were. And this was the Trojan Girl and Valedictorian. And I think, I could be wrong, but this felt like Jemison's take on the Matrix, and I loved it. So you have like this AI that like kind of grows and evolves from our internet crap, from communication, and in the Trojan Girl, they find this like perfect government-based code, because if they find code within people, they can like scavenge it and put it into themselves. And like she gives them the gift of dreams, which makes these AI creatures less like beasts and more like humans. I really liked it. But Valedictorian, like structurally, the Trojan Girl was harder to read because it was just such a different world and a little abstract at times. But the Valedictorian was about humans who were like trapped behind this firewall, and the valedictorian and the lower part of the class gets given over to the enemy, who are, I guess, these AI creatures. And you kind of learn by the end that it's like actually the same, just like far future from Trojan Girls. And I liked it a lot. I know Jemison said she really probably won't make a larger novel off of it, but damn. I'm a big fan of this idea of the Matrix, so still going strong. These stories are also weird, but like awesome. All right, so I have read 2 more stories in the collection. They were called The Storyteller's Replacement and The Brides of Heaven. So I really liked The Storyteller's Replacement and The Brides of Heaven. I felt they were very engaging short stories. I really wanted to finish them. The first one, I love a story with a storyteller. I love being narrated to. I just love that act of storytelling, that homage to that classical way of telling a story. And the story being told was really creepy. So I also appreciated that. It's a story about this man. It's like, I feel like it was like Jemison making fun of classic fantasy, not even making fun of it, but kind of using some of the weirder parts of it. Like this man wanted to be able to have lots of children and was told by a wizard to go eat the heart of a male dragon. And he couldn't find one, so he ate the heart of a female dragon instead. And it's kind of about the consequences of that. And it felt very classic, but very unique as well. And it was really dark, and I really liked it. And then I also read The Bride's Heaven. And this one was really cool. It's these, I'm pretty sure they're Muslim, a ship of Muslim people went to another planet, and you find out that the men all died in their compartment because their compartments were separated. And so it's kind of only women on this planet, and they can't have children, so like they can survive, but they can't like grow, like there's no future. And there's this woman who is caught trying to contaminate the water, and they're trying to figure out why. And in her confession, they learn something, and it was really, I don't know, I was really captivated by it. That's really all I can say. But I really liked these last 2 stories. They were really engaging for me. So I just read The Evaluators by N.K. Jemisin in the short story collection, and I really liked it. One of my favorite things about short stories is when you can get structurally really creative, like something you could do for 30 pages that just like you couldn't do for a whole 300-page book. And this one has like these logs, and we're trying to figure out what happened to these people on this planet when they interacted with this new species, and it's so cool. Oh, I mean, you kind of have to, like most Jemison, pick it apart and figure out what's happening, but like, I thought it worked really well, and I really liked it, and I wish it was a whole novel. But like, I also get that this kind of structure, because it's like really unique, maybe I'll like show you the first page, but you couldn't probably sustain that. It'd be very mixed media maybe. I don't know, I really liked it. It was really cool, and I did not see it coming, but like I kind of did. It felt really tense, like kind of horror almost. Oh, I liked it. And then the one after that I actually read in Sunspot Jungle, and I'm going to try and find that vlog and link it up, because I know I talked about this story on the channel before. So it's called Walking Awake, and it has to do with basically these alien people that get attached to the back of your head, and they like control that body. And it's this place where they basically raise children to be taken by these people when they want new bodies. And I remember liking it, but then I thought that it was like a little slow and I didn't quite know how it ended, but it was really creepy. Again, very like sci-fi horror vibes. So yeah, those are the two that I just read recently. I'm really overall liking this collection. It's very varied in tone and style, which is like one of my favorite things when I'm reading a collection by one author. So all's going well. I've read another 2 stories, another food-related story, but the last one I just read was Cuisines des Mémoires, which I can't speak French. If Ryan was here, I'd make him do it. And this is another story that takes place in New Orleans, which we've had a few of those, and it has French influence and it's a food thing. And you basically go to a restaurant and you can pick any meal in history, like important event or not, and they will replicate it for you. And that's just really cool. It's like, I think I like that Jemisin has been using some of this opportunity of short storytelling to like talk about like some really cool random slice of life things you could do with sci-fi. Like, here's time travel, but just to get slivers of meals and memories for a restaurant gimmick. I like it. I think that's the perfect place for that type of story, because where else do you tell it? It's not necessarily going to have the climax you need for a novella or a novel, so that was really cool. And the one before it was about an elevator. I think it might have been called The Elevator Dancer. And it was nice. I don't think it'll be particularly memorable to me. In fact, I read it a few days ago, and even now I'm trying to remember the impact it had on me, which is why I tried to film these as I go. And it was a security guard who saw a woman in an elevator dancing, and this is a time and place where dancing's illegal. You are assigned people to marry. It's just very authoritarian sci-fi dystopia. And he's obsessed with this woman who dances in the elevator, and that's the short story. And it was interesting. I mean, like I said, I don't really have lasting thoughts from it. I remember liking it, had the writing style I had, but like, I vaguely remember the ending. This was only like 4 pages, but it was, it had an interesting line at the end. Let's see if I can find it, because I mean, I do like that. It talks about the whole idea if a tree falls in the forest, would anyone hear it? And so if a tree falls and there's no one around to hear it but God, would it really bother with anything so mundane as making a sound, or would it dance? And so I really like that. It was just a nice story. But the next one that I'll get to read soon is called Stone Hunger. And that is like the short story that she was working on before she wrote the Broken Earth trilogy, which I recently stole from my mom's place for a reread, hopefully, in the future. So that's exciting. And maybe the one after that's the one that inspires the Dreamblood duology. I don't know. But I'm still having a great time. They're great palate cleansers. I recently just finished a book, so it was nice to just cleanse my mind of that book by reading about a really cool restaurant. I also really miss restaurants, so it was just like nice.
I has a cat, and I've read 2 more stories. Oh, you're purring so loud.
He's not actually very good at purring, but he's real happy right now. But I've read Stone Hunger and the one after that, which I forget its name, so I'll write that. But they both really remind me of the Broken Earth trilogy and then the Inheritance trilogy, which are series I really, really, really want to reread. So the first one is actually like, she even says in the introduction, she was writing it to like kind of play in that world. So we have a main character who is an Origene, so can control the earth, who is like trying to break into this place to get their food. And I don't know how much sense it makes when you don't know the trilogy, because I feel like I was using a lot of my prior knowledge to fill in gaps. But I don't know, I've also been fine with other stories in this collection where I had no prior world-building knowledge. And I really like how she portrayed this main character. It reminded me a lot of Lift from the Stormlight Archives, who I don't really like. And I do think Lift might be a younger character, but they're both similar characters in that they're young women with these magical powers who are always trying to scrounge for themselves. And I really love when Jemisin does younger protagonists. I think one of my favorite novellas is the novella in the Inheritance trilogy, Awakened Gods. Gosh, I love Shill so much. Cutest thing ever. But really liked that, but I loved the next story, whose name I'm forgetting, something about a river. And this is a world where the apocalypse happens, the people are gone, but all the deities that were worshipped still exist, but they're withering away because there's no one there to worship them.
I love when she does weird stuff with gods, which is why it reminds me of the Inheritance trilogy. And it was really interesting. I really liked the note it ended on. Oh, I liked that one a lot. I don't want to like spoil it, but it was just like it took a turn I didn't expect, and I really liked it. But we followed death, so the personification of death in this one, which, you know, like I feel like whenever death is personified, whether it's like Terry Pratchett or something else, it's always like you're an okay guy, you know, like I don't even remember the last time I read a book where death was like a bad person, but those are my thoughts on those two, and still loving the collection.
All right, so sorry for the morning hair look with glasses, but here's Pu Tao on his new tree. But I've read 3 more stories, and they were all pretty good. Yeah, like the book? One was the story that inspired the Dreamblood duology, and like, it was really good. I think that is like one of the best stories, and it could be my nostalgia for loving the series, but it was really cool. And I just feel like with that world, she really looks a lot at body agency and things like that, and that was very prevalent in this one as well. And the next one was weird because I recently read the book Misery by Stephen King, and I felt like this was a different take on that kind of theme of like your biggest fan capturing you, but it was like different because this was a world where if you win an award, I guess the author dies, and like it's something they kind of want. What are you doing? Don't lick the tree. And it seemed like a commentary on how once you win an award, no one wants to hear from you anymore. So it was an interesting, also narratively very unique story, because that one had 6 or 7 quote-unquote chapters, but they were all out of order. So I loved that one. And this recent one was Too Many Yesterdays, Not Enough Tomorrows, something like that. And this was a really cool sci-fi end of the world concept where apparently quantum states kind of formed around individuals and keep rolling back every 10 hours. So you're like in your own perpetual individual Groundhog Day forever. And you can't interact with people, but like blogs still work. And there's discussion about decoherence and how that could make people leave this state. And it was really cool. I really liked how she world built that short story. I only have 3 stories left, but it was a great round, and yeah, I will see you in a bit. All right, so we got the last 3, and I'm filming today, so I figured I'd give you reasonable lighting instead of what I normally do for vlogs. So I had the last 3, which were the U-Train, Non-Zero Probabilities, and Sinners, Saints, Dragons, and Haints in the City Beneath the Still Waters. Ooh, that's a mouthful. I think my favorite of those 3 is Non-Zero Probabilities. But the U-Train was really interesting. It was this woman talking to her friend, but it was like you only heard the one-way conversation. It was very relatable. It was very, hey girl, sorry to be bothering you. I know you have a husband and kids, but blah, 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 here's my day. And she's in New York City, and she keeps talking about these trains that exist that shouldn't have lines. And she eventually gets on the U-Train. Now the title's spelled Y-O-U, but in New York City, trains have the letters. They don't call it the U-Train. And it was a really interesting, relatable, speculative story, I feel. But I don't know if it'll stay with me for that long, but it was like a really fun narrative structure and conversation. And the next one, Non-Zero Probabilities. This is also New York City. You can tell N.K. Jemisin loves New York City. And this one, the main character, you find out that luck matters, like rabbit feet and crossing your fingers and 4-leaf clovers, because if there's a chance something will happen, it will happen, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a 1 in a million. If you don't take precautions, it'll happen. It's really interesting, and it's kind of like this mini apocalyptic thing that some people are just getting used to. I don't know. I could have handled a novella with that topic. That was really interesting. I did like what was discussed, but like a world where bad luck and good luck matter, but it like gets sudden, so you go from like just living a normal life to having to care about like not stepping on cracks in the sidewalk, which I don't think was an example used, but is what I thought of instantly. It did have a sad cat moment, just as like a warning, because like for me I was a little like which like we went by it. N.K. Jemisin does like cats. She has cats, so like I understood why it was brought up, because black cats, but like it wasn't like we didn't linger with it, but just be prepared. And the last one reminded me a lot of a book that I read a long time ago that gave me anxiety because it was like about a hurricane in New Orleans. And I don't know if we were in New Orleans for this one. We were for sure in New Orleans, I'm pretty sure. We have our main character and a storm's coming and he couldn't get out for XYZ reasons. And he's like, I've lived through storms. And he's existing on his porch while the water's rising and he meets a dragon. And like kind of with this dragon, it reminded me of the story where like someone's on the roof of their house and they're like, no, God will save me. And everyone's like, well, God gave you 3 chances and you didn't take them. It was kind of like that, except this person was like taking all of the options. Not saying that these dragons were quote unquote God, but it was reminding me of that story. And it was kind of slow, but I did like the infusion of mythical creatures into this hurricane scene, and also how it discusses hatred and how basically there was this added element that normally a hurricane's just horrible, but sometimes the hate can come, which is like this hatred that makes people worse towards each other. So I thought that was quite an interesting story. Not my favorite in the collection, but not a bad note to end on. And overall, like I said at the beginning of this video, I really liked this collection. I don't think you should read it all in a sitting. I don't think necessarily it gives you a good sense of what she does in novels, but I do think it gives you a good sense of what she likes to think about and how she likes to play around with ideas. I do think the Dreamblood duology short story is a really good representation of the themes and the writing she puts into that, and kind of similar with Stonehunger, which is the short story for the Broken Earth trilogy, although that one, I didn't feel like the writing style was as similar to that trilogy. And yeah, it's a really solid collection. I'm glad I read it, and I hope you guys liked this video. So if you've read this collection, let me know your favorite story down in the comments. And if you made it this far, well, I guess one of the stories I just read had a lot of New York City, so put like a city emoji, or you can leave a smiley face per usual, and like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.